You're listening to Ernestly Speaking, the only weekly podcast that covers friends, foes, and anything that goes. And now, for your badass host, Ernest Owens. And we're back for another episode of Ernestly Speaking with your host, Ernest Owens, myself. Well, it is June. It is Pride Month. There is a lot going on as usual. And I just decided that I was just going to do 2 episodes this week because why not? I felt like the earlier episode I did this week was a catch up and a follow up of everything that had happened during my vacation. And for some reason, I just had it in me just to do another episode this week. So you all are in for a special treat. Happy Pride Month. But there's just so much to talk about. And I am just enjoying the month. Like, we're about to get into summer, which I'm super excited about. There's just a lot of good stuff going on. I mean, the city's back open. There's some hot tea being spilled across the board. And I just said, today just felt like a good day to do a podcast episode. And you all are listening. I mean, you guys keep keeping this on the charts and really just spreading the word and spreading the gospel and the subscribers. And now I'm, starting to go back out in the streets and see more people are going out in the streets and being fully vaccinated and telling me how much they listen to this episode. So I'm like excited that people are really listening to the podcast and everything. So I'm just over the moon. So first thing I want to say is I can now talk about one of my pieces of good news that is now public. I received a grant from the Linfest Institute for this podcast. Yes. I got some money. So I applied for a grant through the Linfest Institute, which is a really great organization named after the late, great Jerry Linfest, who was a very wealthy man who decided to put his money into philanthropy. He's a philanthropist. He was a philanthropist. And his legacy continues in the support that he does for a lot of stuff in Philadelphia through the Linfest Foundation and then the Linfest Institute for Journalism that supports media. So he supports a lot of his money and his charity and his philanthropy and his greatness continues to support local journalism here in Philadelphia, establishment media, independent media. And as you all know, this podcast is independently produced by myself. And there's several grants that they put out. And so this is the Next Generation grant, which is going towards equipment for me to do my podcast remotely. I could do it in different places. So right now I've been doing the podcast, as you know, in-home in my in-home studio. But as the city begins to open up, and as I would love to, I'm traveling clearly, I would love to do my podcast limitless. And so I've been thinking like, where are some places I would want to do my podcast? Or if I'm traveling or I'm going to start going on speaking engagements and my schedule that I have for my podcast may not allow me to do it at home. Maybe I have to do it on the road or I have to do it somewhere else. I want to be able to have that experience and keep the podcast going and having it be weekly as I've always been having it and not miss a beat. And so the only way to do that is to have good equipment that you can be able to do such a program like this at this magnitude from various locations. And so I applied for a grant to do that. The grant got accepted and the money's coming and I'm getting my equipment. And so, the next time I'm in Texas, I'll be doing a podcast in Texas. I won't have to wonder, maybe I shouldn't do it. Maybe I can't because I can't bring all this stuff on the airplane. Now I will have the equipment for me to be able to do that. So that's some great news. So I'm super excited about that. I'm really happy that that's happening. And shout out to the Linfest Institute for this lovely grant. As you all know, I've been getting support from grants in order to even produce this podcast from day one. How I got this incredible equipment from the very beginning was from the PayPal grant I got, Facebook, the PA grant for my small business through Ernestly Empire, which is this podcast is being produced. And so I was able to do a lot of good things to get new business equipment that also helped support this podcast from its inception because it's independently produced, right? Like I don't have a company that has bought it or I'm not partnering with some of these big groups and all the marketing is through me. All of the ideas, conception, this is my baby, right? Like I do a lot of columns and work and stuff for other publications through partnerships and work and things of that nature. But this podcast is exclusively mine. And I love that, right? Because I can talk my shit. Like I can say shit, right? And I don't have to like wonder, I can't use that word or whatever. I mean, I really can do what my thing on here. And I can go as long as I want, as short as I want, and it's all mine. So that was something that was important to me. And this podcast is one of those um, special opportunities. People have been telling me things like, "Oh, you ever thought about taking it here or putting it down?" Like, look, could I do that? Yes, but do I really want to do that? Mm, not really crazy about it. I mean, I think everything can be monetized to a certain extent, right? And like I said, there is this possibility that I can, make the podcast have a monthly subscription starting. I mean, it could start immediately now, apparently, with this new Apple Podcast Connect program they're doing. But I'm like, maybe I'll consider the thought starting in 2022. But right now, I'm now 20 plus episodes in. Um, I just want to have fun. I just want to, see where it goes. And I've learned that seeing where things goes is better than trying to come up with an exquisite roadmap, especially when you're entering territory that is new. The podcast territory is still new for me, even though I know I sound like a pro and I've looked like I've mastered podcasting. I'm still learning some things, and it's been fun going through this journey from the very beginning. And this was like my 2021 goal was to really do this podcast and be consistent. And like, shout out to me, pat on the back to me that we're halfway into the year. Can you believe that? And I've been consistently delivering and putting this show together, and each week just coming in with the fire and just keep going. So, I mean, this is exciting, and I'm really, proud of myself, but I'm really happy that you all have made it worthwhile. Like, listening to the show makes me realize there's people that's going to listen, because like I said before, writers want to be read and podcasters wants to be listened to. If no one's listening to the podcast, if no one's talking about it, if no one's sharing it, like, what's the point to do it? I mean, that's my opinion. I mean, I'm even if I'm not trying to make massive bread off of the podcast as of right now, that doesn't mean that I don't find stock and value in it. To me, the stock and value is the subscribers, the listeners, the downloaders, the people that continue to share it and engage with it. That's what keeps me motivated, because I'm producing content that people are actually consuming. That's how the business works. That's how I work. I create things for people to consume. Things that I want to just consume for myself is a phone call conversation with my besties, and I'm just having one-on-one conversation. Having a conversation with thousands of people who are listening to this podcast on a regular basis, that's different. Same way with my readers, right? That's different. That there's a purpose. There's a lot of thought I put behind it to make it happen. And the grant is further validation that there is people that find value in this work and believe that they should invest in this work because it's doing something different. So thank you. I just want to say that. So the city's opening back up, and like this week I've been going out to events and listen, it is still a pandemic, but y'all, I have been slipping slightly. I mean, sometimes I'm forgetting to walk out the door with my mask, but I'm always keeping a spare in the bag. Let's not get it twisted. But I'm getting a little comfortable. I find them, and I think it was because I went to Texas and I saw so many people not wearing masks. But I always had a mask. I do wear masks. Let me be clear. But I've gotten a little comfortable slightly. And I know that means I need to be super vigilant, because if I'm saying this out loud, that means my ass is about to have two double masks, going to be a mess tomorrow, right? But I'm just saying that the city opened a little earlier. It was supposed to be June 11th. It opened like June 2nd. So there's just some interesting developments on that, because it's like at first everybody was still trying to act like, but apparently, according to the mayor, which again, he's a crumb bum, but Mayor Kinney said that apparently there's been some progress on this. It's like, the things are looking pretty good. He was acting like a principal that was telling people that they have an extra holiday or a snow day. It was that kind of energy at his press conference, but he just was like, the city's opening back up. There's still a couple slight restrictions before June 11th, but for the most part, it's on and popping. And I feel like there's some death sayers out there who are just very still just being super, super vigilant. And I have to say, I appreciate people taking the pandemic seriously, and we should take the pandemic seriously. Let me be very clear, right? But I do think to a certain extent, I just feel like some of the Debbie Downers are a little too much. like we gotta acknowledge that there has been progress. I'm not saying that that means that everything's terrible or everything's perfect, but you gotta acknowledge some of the progress, and you gotta loosen up a little bit because it's unless you are someone who is my best friend Jamarcus' mother is a she's everything. She's a hero. She's been working this pandemic, in the hospitals. She's been a care provider, a service worker, deeply working with COVID patients, people who are testing positive in Houston. And the work and the labor that she's doing is important work. And she's, just the stories. I mean, we went and hung out with his mom too downtown, like down south, and we was all there. We went to happy hour, and she was just telling us some of the stories, and I understand completely her reservations because she's also in a city where people have not been wearing masks. I mean, they're like the second Atlanta over there in Houston, but I understand that for her, and I can see why it's very real for her, and a reminder that the pandemic is still happening. But that being said, some of y'all are just like, my God. Like, I feel like there has been antisocial people who loved the pandemic because they were already antisocial and they enjoyed it and they kind of hate going back to work. But do you hate going back to work because of the pandemic, or do you just hate your coworkers? Like, there's a moment, there's a moment here to be real, right? Like, is some of this is people already just was not very much social people. Some folks really did not like people, did not like events, really like to be a homebody, and this was an opportunity excuse to do so. And by all means, just say that. But to really use and weaponize the pandemic consistently, eventually shit is going to, clear itself out. We've had the Spanish flu, we've then had smallpox and measles and everything else under the sun. These things come and these things die. And I'm happy that this motherfucker is dying. It's dying a death, but it is. I mean, there was a case New York had, well, see, Cuomo, I don't know about Cuomo, though, Governor Cuomo. I don't know if I trust him on these reports. But apparently, New York City the other day had 0 deaths from COVID in one day in New York City. So it is some progress. We have to acknowledge the progress. To not acknowledge the progress is to stay in a perpetual state of disdain, resentment, despair, and quite frankly, the sun is fucking shining. So I need people to get a little bit better about things. Calm the fuck down slightly. And also, at the same time, let's not act like, June 2021 is June 2020. It's not. Not when it, now on race, it's still fucked up. But like on this pandemic, there has been progress. So I think in my comfort, I'm getting comfortable slightly. Not to say, like, I have to still, I ride Uber. Uber still requires you to wear a mask. I'm still wearing a mask. The school district of Philadelphia is open to schools back up in the fall, but they say that there will be masks that's going to be enforced. But like, I'm thinking about my wedding in the fall. And quite frankly, I'm not pressed to make people wear a mask at my wedding. I'm sorry. It's going to be October. The folks that are coming to my wedding, as you know, are 99% of them are fully vaccinated. I think my little brother, who is 11, is the only one I think in my wedding at this point that's not fully vaccinated. Everybody else is, I think my youngest is about to get his second shot, who's 18, because they just opened that up, because he just turned 18, so they just opened that up for people. So for him, so he's about to get his second one before he goes to Temple. But everybody else is vaxxed. So I'm just sitting here like, do I really want to make a mandatory mask requirement? Look, my whole mentality is if you want to wear a mask at the wedding, you can. If you don't, you're okay. Where we are having the wedding at location not publicly disclosed at this time, where we're having the wedding at, there's lots of space, there's lots of fresh air, there's a lot of vibes. It's very nice, very safe, very secure. So I don't feel this like pressure or this fear. Now, if you would have asked me this 6 months ago, I would have said, oh yeah, everyone's wearing a mask, hand sanitizer everywhere. There will still be hand sanitizer everywhere because you should be having hand sanitizer regardless of a pandemic. But as far as like being just this super strict, don't wear a mask type of, all that, I'm feeling more and more comfortable with being like, wear it if you want to for your own personal thing, but I'm not mandating it because I do trust science. I do think by October, folks are good. And let's be also clear. There are, at this point in the game, there are people who, if you want the vaccination, you're going to get the vaccination. If you don't want it, I mean, at this point in the game, I believe that those people are just not going to get it. And they're choosing to play Russian roulette with their lives. Period. Like, I'm being 100 here when I say that at this point, unless I'm not talking about children, but there's some people out here that I don't know anybody, at least not even in my professional circle, because this is a different class of folks. Folks, I'm being very mindful to not to acknowledge that my group is very much so educated and privileged in certain resources and opportunities, right? So I don't say they're the litmus test. But what I'm saying is that based on public resources accessible and talking to elected officials and looking at health practitioners out there, great people like Dr. Ayla Stanford, there are tons of opportunities right now that if you want a vaccination in my city, if you want a vaccination in most parts of this country, I don't think that it is completely the hardest thing anymore to get one. What I've been seeing in Philadelphia has been cases where there has been clinics set up and there's been vaccinations that have gone to waste. Like there was a moment where it was almost like a Beyonce concert where folks was just trying to get those shots, right? But then, a couple of months later, it was just start to be very, very like, some people still getting them, people waited. It was just a lot of hesitancy. I do believe we're in a phase where there are people that are slowly but surely converting, into getting vaccinations. I don't think the cause is over. But I'm saying all this to say that in major metropolitan cities, at least, I'm not hearing people say that they don't know where to get a vaccination. They don't know how to get a vaccination. It's more of a conversation of do they want to, should they, and that's what their struggle lies. It's not the access argument as much, more so the moral, personal hesitations and reservations about it. And listen, those are fair and people have a right to question things for themselves, but I want to be clear that it's not an accessibility argument as much as it was in the very beginning. And I don't think the Tuskegee argument is as thorough either, because a lot of people just did this fast logic of, Tuskegee, there's a history, Tuskegee. And I'm like, no. As a Black person, I will say that the Tuskegee argument, the case of people just referencing Tuskegee as the huge reason why people are not getting vaccinated. No, I think people just don't get vaccinated in general because, yes, Tuskegee caused people to have distrust, but it wasn't the rooted science alone behind why people just didn't want to get it. There's just some people that really are obsessed with holistic, remedies. And that's a cultural thing, right? Various cultures, not just Black people, but just different groups, Black and brown communities have always been slighted by the reservation of medicine. And that's, Tuskegee inspires some of that, but a lot of people have further continued that based on their whole experiences with healthcare in general in this country. And so when you deny people universal healthcare, you put them in a position to find other ways for them to quote unquote treat themselves or heal themselves if they think they can, right? And that independence and that rebellion doesn't change in the pandemic for some people, sadly. They will continue to believe that there are other methods to doing it. Like there's people out here that believe Dr. Sebi and his smoothie can cure AIDS. And that Dr. Sebi was the truth and that everything he was talking about was, whatever. Now, I think some of that's him and his methods. I think some of that's far-fetched, right? But there are people that swear by him and believe he was the truth. And, Nipsey Hussle's following of him reintroduced him to a new generation of people. The late Nipsey Hussle, right? That made people believe that all these types of Hotep-ish, holistic, semi-spiritual, faux spiritual methods around health and care and all this wellness drives them to feel like there's no need for a thing like a vaccination. There's no need to take, certain type of retroviral and health preventative measures that are coming from, prescriptions and things of that nature. And there's some people that died because they did not take that type of information seriously. People have died because they have put their health and their information in the hands of some people that have capitalized off of some of this discord, right? And it's white supremacy is to blame, right? Because that issue, these issues around racism and healthcare, has instigated it. But you've also had people within the community that capitalize off of those divisions of white supremacy and mislead community members into supporting causes and issues that only would do more self harm. It's complicated, is what I'm saying, and I just think that with this pandemic, there are people that are having reservations in ways that I'm scared to say, but could be causing some of their demise. I know people who have gotten COVID, some people I know who have passed from COVID, and these things have happened because of the fact that they were very cynical and they didn't want to get vaccinated. There was one woman who I know named Daphne Goggins, and if you're in Philadelphia, you remember her. She was a black woman who was the first black woman to get the Philadelphia Republican Party to endorse her for mayor. Now, they eventually rescinded on it, but she got this nomination back in 2019. She was a black woman. She was planning to run against Kenny, and then they kind of, once that nomination happened, when she got the Republicans' nomination for mayor to go against Kenny, there was some messy politics, and they ended up taking it from her, and it was fucked up. And then a white guy ended up getting a nomination. She ended up dropping out of the race, and then this person ran off to run. Of course, this person lost, but his name was Billy, was his name. But it was so messy. That party, that the whole situation was very messy, and it just reveals that there's racism. Even when you're trying to be that black Republican, there's racism to be experienced, right? Across the board, Democrats are racist as fuck as well. But that being said, I followed her campaign, her short campaign, and covered her and took her seriously as a candidate. I was fascinated with just her. She was different, you know. Her beliefs were very problematic at times, right? Like, she was somebody who was very much, was very conservative, and she was a big, huge Trump supporter. And she went on CNN supporting Trump and Fox News and things like that. She went on cable news defending Donald Trump and just really was just an interesting person, problematic, clearly had flaws, but was just an interesting case because of how open she was about her conservatism. But I will say that in spite of Daphne Goggins' issues with her beliefs around that front, she was someone who did work. She was very active in her community. She was very black, right? Like in her, even though she supported anti-black elected officials, right? She was very much passionate about change in her community. She did not like the direction of North Philadelphia was going, and there are some fair critiques. She makes me think of some of these Republicans that are black Republicans, where they do this thing where they're very critical of the Democratic Party. They can find its flaws. And I'm very much one of those people. I know there's some bullshit in this city. We got indicted Democrats fucking it up. But I can never get to the point where just because you think this one party is fucked up, right, which we can agree, means that you go to the Republican Party, which is also fucked up. And I hate the lesser of evils, but that's really what we're dealing with in politics right now, when you're dealing with a mostly two-party system. So I always was like, yes, I get it. Give a big middle finger to the Democratic Party. But you can't give a big middle finger to the Democratic Party if you're about to become a Republican, because, child, that's like, how do you do that? You know what I'm saying? It's like if you was in a relationship and you dated Tristan Westbrook or whatever, the guy who's dating Khloe Kardashian, cheating on her, was always messing around with her friends. So you go from Tristan to then turn around going to Future. Now, both of these men are trash, but me and my best friend agree that at least Future acknowledges he's trash. Future, the rapper, and he wears that necklace that says low life for life. He knows he's a low life. I gotta enjoy that. He's a bad guy, but he's a very attractive bad guy. But he's also a bad guy because he's very, like, he knows he's not shit. And that's why people like him, because he knows he's not. He's like, he's that guy that, like, he looks at you and he's like, I'm not, I'm all trouble. I'm no good. And you know that you want to take that risk because of just whatever that bravado and swag that he has that just makes you feel like, oh goodness, let me throw my life away in this man's hands because he's such trash. If you was going to go to the dumpster, go to the dumpster with Future. I mean, just by all means. That's who you want to like throw your, you know, throw all your confidence away. I don't know. I just find him. I find him enthralling. But like again, trash nonetheless. But trash and Gucci flip flops. Let's be very clear. So there's people that like. I feel like yeah. So if you Tristan like Chloe's on and off boyfriend or whatever. This guy is trash. So if you said to somebody, "Oh, I'm leaving you, Tristan, and I'm going to Future," Tristan's probably looking like, "Future, you left me for Future? Good luck." Like that's how I feel about it. Like Democrats. Democrats are clearly the Tristan of the situation, and clearly the Republican Party is the Future of the situation. And both are trash, but one is more trashy than the other. And so leaving Tristan to go to Future is like, child, you playing yourself, right? So that's how I feel about it. It's like you got to pick your poison. It's like it's like the debate between Dr. Umar Johnson and Sean King. You say, okay, I'm going to stop following Dr. Umar Johnson and I'm going to start following Sean King. Like, pick your poison, right? I think that's the logic here, right? It's like, I just don't get it. So they think they're proving a point. And like, yes, the fuck you, Tristan, the fuck you, Democratic Party is strong, right? But then to say you're going to the Republican Party is like, wait, that's where the record stops. Wait, I got you. Democrats got their problems. But what the fuck does the Republicans have? What is those? What are those? I just think it takes a lot of you have to do a lot of cognitive dissonance. You literally have to reprogram the right side of your brain or the left side of your brain, right? And readjust the neurons to really be able to convince yourself that you're making a better decision by switching there. So it's just a lot. It's a lot. But nonetheless, I digress. Goggins was a very anti-vax person. Like, Goggins and I were still friends on social media. We were still keeping up with each other. She was very anti-vax. We had a little small brief shuffle in our DMs because she sent me a video, that video during the summer of those African doctors that was outside of Capitol Hill talking about the vaccine was a hoax, and there was that hoax video that spread and Facebook had to take it down. She sent that to me. And I was very upset because I was like, why would you send this to me? You know this is not it. You know what I'm saying? Something, there's some stuff going on, what's going on kind of thing, right? So I remember she sent me that video and I was just kind of like, a lot was going on. So she sent that to me. So I'm actually looking at my DMs when we first messaged, like the last times we messaged each other. She did this to me August 27th, 2020 at 2:12 p.m. and was like, no wonder Falsey is laying a little lower these days. And it was a video of that. I didn't respond. I think I sent her an upset emoji because I just didn't like how she was spreading this nonsense that the COVID was not real. But let's put this in context. December 4th. Okay, so after she said that, August 27th, she sent me the video saying this is nonsense, yada, yada, yada. Okay? December 4th, 2020, at 2:34 p.m. She likes to send me stuff at 2 p.m. She said, congratulations on your endeavors. You be funny as hell. Thanks for making my stretch in jail just a bit more tolerable. Laugh emojis. Which was sweet. I was like, what? You're in jail? Like, I was shook. But I was like, she can't be in jail. She's writing through Facebook. I said, where are you? She said to me, Temple, COVID. She had gotten COVID and she was at Temple University Hospital. So then I said, oh, get well, with an exclamation point, because I was shocked. She said to me, oh, thanks. Hashtag God got this. A couple of days later, she passed away. I say all that to say that political beliefs in my opinion, Donald Trump killed her. Donald Trump's rhetoric, his misinformation, his poor leadership killed her. That's my belief. That's how I feel. That's my opinion that when you have leaders, and how many other people died not taking the vaccine seriously through his logic, right? She was driven by the misinformation, the fake news, the misinformation that he projected out there. And she really thought that this was a machine created by the Democratic Party, that that this was something they were doing to, you know, drive fear for the election, the campaign. I mean, she just really believed a lot of that stuff. And I think that might have influenced her lack of care and concern around the vaccine, around all of the safety precautions. And remember, this is December, right? So we're in winter when shit really the numbers start to get shaky again because people start to get a little loose and it was just too much. But she didn't make it. She didn't make it. And mm, it's it's sad. So I say all to say, be smart, be vigilant, be optimistic. Don't be a Debbie Downer, but at the same time, use your noggin. You know what I'm saying? Use your noggin, and it's important. Period. All right. So this month is Pride Month, as you all know. The anniversary of Stonewall, we're in its 52nd anniversary this month, right? When Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera and so many other um, black and brown and white LGBTQI people was at that damn Stonewall Inn and a brick got thrown, not by a white man, okay? That really pushed the gay liberation movement. Now, let's be clear, history tells us and will remind us that, 2020 was the 55th anniversary of the LGBT civil rights movement, which really started in Philadelphia. There was a marker in Philadelphia, Dewey counter luncheons where people were doing protests and similar things. There was stuff prior to Stonewall, and it's that history is important to know. So all you people that just always reference Stonewall, Stonewall was the major, event, right? Kind of like if you look at the civil rights movement and you talk about the Montgomery bus boycotts, like that's one of the big standout moments that like really made the civil rights movement really get that national big buzz. But before the Montgomery bus boycotts, there was other, acts of defiance that was prior to that, right? But that doesn't get the same attention. I would look at Stonewall as that moment for the LGBTQ rights movement, right? LGBTQIA rights movement. Like that was the moment, like the big, moment that opened up the other doors. So I look at it that way. Look, things are better, but things aren't perfect, as you know. We still don't have the Equality Act passed in Congress and in the Senate and become law. Marriage equality is here, but child, listen, gays and lesbians and bisexuals and intersex and questioning and queer and transgender, marriage ain't the only thing that's rocking our boat, okay? Like, yes, I'm getting married and it's fabulous, but like people out here want equal opportunity to get jobs, to get housing, to get food, and yes, there are some major cities, okay, that are providing protections for LGBTQI people. But across the country, across the states, federally, there's no federal protections. And there are some inroads, right? There is some improvement around job and whatnot. But public accommodations is still a debate, right? If people can, get cakes and go to certain bathrooms or be able to get public space and access or be able to be out in certain areas, right? There's still some fuckery around public accommodations. Housing discrimination is still very real in certain parts of this country, and people have used religion and their faith to make this even more complicated, right? So it's a lot. It's still some issues here, and some of these issues are still being brought up around the Supreme Court. There's an issue right now in the Supreme Court that's being discussed that deals with Philadelphia around adoption. Look it up. There's a Catholic adoption agency that is trying to figure out by the Supreme Court if they can deny same gender couples from being able to have adopting kids to their agency. And they're using their religious beliefs to justify whether or not they can or cannot do that. So there's still a fight going on right now around these issues. It's not solved. Unemployment, issues around people that are HIV positive, people who are trying to get access to care, and the racial disparities around access to care is still an issue. There's still a disproportionate number of Black and brown queer people who are not getting proper health care around that. And that's impacting and has killed a generation of young queer people. This is still an issue. There is still an epidemic. There is still a lot of miseducation, misinformation, and barriers and stigma around a lot of these issues. So we have progress is still relative in these conversations around Pride Month. But you all love your corporations rainbow washing every fucking thing, every fucking year, and still not making that commitment. It reminds me of what happened with Black History Month, where we talked about that, where I wrote for a piece for the Washington Post, my debut, my first ever time writing there, which was awesome. But I was talking about how they want corporations to have their hands all up in Black History Month. And it's too late for Pride, because Pride, I think, is easier because, one, there's white people that are centering themselves within the LGBTQI movement. So white people's ability to permeate Pride and corporalize it is easier because of privilege, right? Right? Privilege allows white people to take Pride to a whole new level. White queer people, right? Especially white cisgender men, the gay men that use it as an opportunity to, in some say it's a bitter, it's complicated, y'all. Like, in some sense, you're like, yes, we it's hard because I have Black and brown community members who they talk shit about Pride Month, and as much as I have my critiques about Pride Month, right? But I know that their critiques aren't necessarily in solidarity with liberating queer Black people like myself, right? Like, they don't like Pride Month because they think Pride Month is an affront to Black History Month or to Black people. And that ain't true. And I think that that's fucked up. And I think that it's complicated when I see this, because people see me criticize white gay men and criticize the corporization of Pride Month. And I'm doing that as a queer person, right? As a queer Black person who's experienced racism in the LGBTQ community. But I want to be clear that that doesn't mean that I'm against the presence of Pride Month as an existence. I don't like the corporization of it. I don't like the fact that Black and brown LGBTQI people are being erased from a lot of this marketing, the movement, the work, the credit. I don't like that shit. But I do want a Pride Month. I do want LGBTQI people of all racial backgrounds to feel seen and heard and visible. And I sometimes sense that straight people, cishet people specifically, from various communities I'm in, whether they're Black and brown communities or just white people, that when they dismiss Pride Month or agree with me, they agree with me for reasons that are not the same reasons that I have. Like, you don't agree with me that we should have a Pride Month. You don't agree with me that we need to continue to acknowledge the differences that LGBTQIA people experience, and that there needs to be support for them, that there needs to be better support. I'm asking for a better Pride Month. These people don't want a fucking Pride Month. And they don't want one. And so they it's interesting how some of the people that follow me, and I mean, I'm keeping it 100 on this podcast, but I noticed that when I'm critical about LGBTQI stuff, they are going up for it. Like, they are like, oh yes, I agree. That's how I feel. It's like, no, that's not how you really feel. You're really low key, have homophobic thoughts, and you can't stand to see any of this shit, but you don't know how to frame it. So you will find easier argument. So I've seen people that are like critical of the LGBTQ community, but they try to make it, they like to frame it around a race lens. Like, oh, well, the LGBTQ community is racist. No, let's be fucking clear. White LGBTQ people are racist. White people are not the LGBTQ community. They don't define it. They don't define it. Let's be 100. They're not the ones who have really shaped this movement to be what it is today. Okay, it's really been Black trans women, Black non-binary people across the board, and trans folks and everyone else in between. It's really been Black and brown queer folks that have really steered the movement and made it as inclusive, as body positive, as all of those things. Now, you do have icons like Harvey Milk and people like that, but you also got your Bayard Rustins, your Audre Lordes, your James Baldwin, your Marsha P. Johnsons, your Sylvia Rivera's, okay? You have James Beam. You got Joseph Beam. You got all of these people who has also played a role in shaping how we perceive this. The Black ballroom scene, you don't get Pose without Black and brown queer and trans people. You don't get ballroom, you don't get Vogue, you don't get any of that stuff without us. So we are the flavor, the energy, the yes of all of this shit. Okay? The reality is that, like every community, white people hold power and the ability to center themselves in movements and put themselves as the forefathers at the front, leading the cause, being the heroes in their own stories that are revisionist as fuck. They will do it. There was a movie that came out a couple years ago that was about Stonewall that was the most ahistorical, revisionist, fucked up story. And I wrote a whole piece about it for the Huffington Post back when the Huffington Post was the Huffington Post about this Stonewall movie. It was like, this is trash. You got this white boy censored as this hero throwing this brick like he the fucking, I mean, this man does not exist, but they censored it on a white a white gay character that was not trans. And they made him be the person that is at the forefront of this movement. And that was not true. And a lot of this is not true, right? Like, it's just a lot of people have said things about Pride that in Stonewall and these things that are just not true. And what I would say is that a lot of straight people who have tried to diss Pride or diss these things, but have tried to find other angles to try to appeal to Black and brown LGBTQIA people, if your movements are not intersectional, that consider us, that makes us feel seen in those spaces, you're just as much as a part of the problem, right? Like, honestly, I don't separate my mindset from Pride Month to Black History Month. Stop making Black and brown queer people have to decide. I don't fucking decide. For me, Pride Month is Black History Month because there's so much Black history within the LGBTQI movement that makes this month a real part of our entire Black history. The fact that we have to separate these people, like Marsha P. Johnson was a Black trans woman that was a rebel. Why is she only celebrated and talked about within the LGBTQIA history only? She needs to be elevated and talked about within the Black history conversation in the canon. Even Bayard Rustin, they try so much to erase this man. Read the book Lost Prophet. Very powerful book. Changed my entire perception in college. This is a book about Bayard Rustin's life. It's a huge, big book, but it made me, that was like my inspiration. Like, that was the civil rights leader I never knew existed until I went to college. I never knew who he was. I didn't know his connection to Chester, PA, around Philadelphia, but he has rich history. And I actually met his husband, who is still alive, or his partner, who is still alive. I met him a couple of years ago and really read this book. And it just was fascinating. This man lived a whole life, and he deserves an HBO film or a major film. And I think that, like, I know they say we need more gay actors playing characters, but like, listen, Samuel L. Jackson could play Bayard Rustin. Just putting it out there. Just putting it out there. No shade. Just, teasing that out. That there's a possibility, just a possibility, of seeing this man play that role, or find other actors that could play those roles. It's not easy, but you know what I'm saying. Uh, it'll be interesting to see what's going on. So I just wanted to put that out there that there's a lot of things going on uh, around the history, but like uplift Bear Rustin, read that book Lost Prophets, look it up on Amazon. It's a great book. But I say all that to say that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in communities around LGBTQI people. And I think one of the things we have to stop doing is making people of color feel like they have to choose one side or the other. It's not that. We're both. And we're going to be both throughout. Like when I look at Pride Month, I look at Pride Month with the pride of a Black man who sees this history as a part of my entire identity across the board. My Blackness does not get erased the moment Pride Month happens in June, the same way my queerness does not get erased the moment I step into Black History Month. And we have to acknowledge that. And it's just too many people that's just not. So I need you to look up Intersectionality by Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw. Really, look it up. If you don't know what it is, don't know what it's about, don't understand that theory that she came up with over 30 years ago, I got to meet her too, and she follows me on Twitter. Love her. Inspired. I had to go through experiences and read and really understand myself and realize that all of the thoughts I've had about identity and all of these experiences were not foreign. Like, these are not new concepts. These issues have been around for years and decades, and they've been wrestled with through time, and people have written about them. And it's just the part of us as the people, right, to do that work and stop perpetuating stupid stereotypes and letting dumbasses like Dr. Umar Johnson and all these other people tell us what masculinity is and what Black people are and this stuff. It's like, stop it. Stop consuming social media scholars that are not really credible in these types of lines of work. I mean, look where this man got his doctorate from. Sorry, but like, not where he got it from, but what he got it in. And it does not correlate to half the shit or 95% of the shit that he's trying to give advice on. Too many people let people fulfill it. A lot of people are not right because they're right. A lot of people are just co-signing a lot of your own personal animosities. Like Dr. Umar Johnson isn't a doctor by the sense of what he tries to be an expert on. He's not an expert on women. This motherfucker can't even keep a relationship. Who is he married to? This man's asking for donations and gifts on Cash Apps and talking so much about the love of Black women. What women has he been consistently with and involved with that wants to take and deal with his raggedy ass? Like, look at some of the sources, okay? I was hearing about this Kevin Samuels guy, which we talked about on a couple episodes back, and apparently there was a speculation he had a man in his bed through some glitch, quote unquote. I barely follow this stuff, but this man dogs out Black women on a regular basis on social media, trying to give them advice. And my whole thing is, why? What makes any of these men important, right? And I just think a lot of it is that we have the cult of celebrity. There is a huge cult of celebrity that makes people feel vindicated in the takedown or the disrespect of people, or this desire to feel like they could get validation from somebody based on how many followers they have and shit. It's just the stupidest shit. It's the stupidest shit. I will tell you, as somebody who's gotten more followers over the years, I am still the same person I was when I had 2,000, 1,000 followers. I mean, I have evolved as a person, but to be clear, my principles and my value system has remained the same, intact, right? The virtues have remained intact. How I think about those virtues evolve, but who I am and what the truth I stand in has not changed. And I think there's a lot of people out here who think that somehow these things are supposed to transform everything about you. It doesn't. Candace Owens is still trash, whether she has a New York Times bestseller or not. Because Candace Owens' value system is piss poor morally. And so everything else that she tries to do or decide to do, it doesn't matter whether she gets elevated to a new show or whatever. If that system is fucked up, it's going to be fucked up regardless of it. You can't put a good, clean system in a different car. If the car is trash, if the car is ran over, it's a total, you can change the pieces, but it's still a total ass car. And I think we got to be real about that. Everybody wants to change parts, but if the body of the car is still fucked up, it doesn't matter what everything else is doing to it. You know what I'm saying? What they say, you can't put no gold hubcaps on a hoopty. But a lot of y'all try. A lot of y'all try. That's why I love me some Future. Because Future, you know what you get it with Future. He ain't changed nothing. Man got better shoes, GQ covers, but he's still trash. And he knows he is. He's a low life for life. A cute low life for life, but a low life. A low life. He called himself that, not I. But anyway, I digress. Fun fact, I almost called this podcast I Digress. Like my podcast is going to be called I Digress because I digress a lot. But I realized Ernestly speaking was a lot more marketable. But I Digress might be something else. Stay tuned. Anyway, so let's get into this problem of drama that I have been experiencing. And a lot of you all have seen this taken out on social media. And, I've realized that sometimes Instagram, even though when I try to give you guys essays to swipe through social media and all of that there's still sometimes elements that I would love to say verbatim, because I feel like when I have the opportunity to sit down and testify before my my thousands of little Ernest followers, I want to be able to tell things in totality and with my voice in ways that sometimes I don't want to write long-winded, because it becomes a whole long ass essay, and some stuff just can't be said. I prefer to say it versus write it. So let's get into it. As you all know, the black and brown pride flag that you all see is the Philadelphia pride flag. Everyone was wondering, what are those black and brown stripes? What happened? What, where? Many of my followers probably already know this story because it's not that long ago. But I want to put this in context slightly to explain why there was some drama this week, okay, with myself and Amber Hikes. Amber Hikes, she's somebody. And why the activists from the Black and Brown Workers Collective, which is now the Black and Brown Workers Cooperative, the BBWC, Abdul Ali Muhammad, which is a good friend of mine, why they spoke out and why others were talking about this and why all this popped off. So let's back all of this the fuck up. In 2015, I wrote an op-ed called What He's Not Fetch Enough. It was for Metro. Yes, the free paper before my career was where it was today. I wrote about racial discrimination at Woody's, the bar, the experiences I felt, the racism I felt at the bar, the men who were there that was rude and weird and creepy, and just all of the energy in the neighborhood and how I felt as a black queer person at that time, experiencing those things, going to those clubs. Because for me, the neighborhood, when I first came into the community as a college student, this was a place for me to, open up another side of myself that was suppressed when I was in high school. I was underage. I wasn't able to go to gay clubs. I wasn't able to, have those experiences. I dated boys and I had some experiences, but not, in this outward way, in this club way, in this nightlife way. And so this was an experience to be able to do so in college, to be able to do so away from my family, be grown, to just be independent. And so going to Woody's on college nights, which used to be on Wednesday nights at Woody's, right? And then Eye Candy, when they came around, their nights were on Friday nights. And so college nights were basically, these are the nights you can go out if you were under 21. But then the other nights, it was 21 and up. So Wednesday nights and Friday nights would be popping. And I used to get in. I used to have a good old time. But in those experiences, I also experienced racism. There were white men in there that tried to touch me, and I was like, we don't do that. Or say little racist things, but it was fetishization, which, let me be clear. So I wasn't being called directly the N-word, but ooh, sexy chocolate. Ooh, I like your brown skin. Ooh, you got BBC, which is big black cock. Yeah, I'm going to say it on my fucking podcast. Stereotypes about black sex, and I'm a tall black man. So it was assumptions, my butt getting slapped, people squeezing my ass cheeks because, you got a big old black booty. Big old black booty. I mean, I was just all kind of fucked up shit. Nothing different from what I experienced. I would imagine what black women experience in the club. Probably not by white men in certain spaces, right? But maybe, who knows, right? But this was the type of stuff that would happen. It was a combination of racialized fetishization, sexual harassment, and just some racism across the board. And then some of these bars did the most, right? I remember Jamarcus would tell you, we used to go out and we get patted down a lot more. They would wait, they would hold us in the line. I felt like they had a black person quota. So when two, three black folks get out, then they put the other black in. It was almost like them college frat parties where, they said they didn't want to be a sausage fest, which meant that if you was a guy and you brought multiple girls with you, you could get in because they wanted to make sure there was a higher ratio of women at the party, which fuels all kind of conversation about rape culture and fucked up fuckery. But like this was the kind of energy, but this was different in those bars where it was like, we ain't gonna take too many of y'all up in this bar. And they did create nights, quote unquote, for us, right? I remember it was Latin night, which was the night where all the quote unquote Latino boys would come, and there would be this fetishization, right? Because on Latin night, you knew that these white men who were creepy and horny and messed up would go there and fetishize. They was going there looking for that, quote unquote. Oh yes, and there was hip hop night, and some of them didn't go to hip hop night, except some of the older white men would go to hip hop night. Right? Because they had a fetish for black men. And so they knew what nights to go. And so for us as young black men, right, that would go to these places, we was going because this was the time where they would play the music we fucking like. Like, I love me some pop music. I gets down on some Madonna, some Britney, okay? Early Gaga, it goes up and down with her. But I love some pop music. But those nights were the nights where I felt like, okay, there was going to be more black folks up in these clubs. I can twerk. I could just have it was just a different energy. Let's just say that. But you also had the voyeur-esque eye of men who were very much so. It was just very different energies. So those were those experiences. I wrote about some of that in this op-ed. The op-ed went viral. It got all this citywide attention. And this is remember, this is 2015. Yes, y'all, I've been in this for a minute, a little bit. But 2015, I wrote this, and this got a lot of traffic. At the time, the bars, white people, I got all kind of hate, okay? All types of hate mail. People talking shit about me. People talking about you should be sued. They were coming at me left and right. And back then, I was like 24 years old then. Yeah, I was 24 then. And so I was, 23. I was 23 because I hadn't turned 24 yet because I was in October. So I was 23 years old. Ooh. Yeah, I was like 20. I was 23. Yeah. Wow. So time flies. But at that time, I was like 23. And I just remember people just really going ham. And it was hard because I was being gaslit. Like a lot of folks were saying racism didn't exist. I was being a drama queen, didn't know what I was talking about. All kind of crazy stuff. The bar owner is married to a black woman. How could you say that? He can't be racist. I mean, it's all kind of, the same shit that we hear today about racism, right? So I dealt with that. And then something happened. So I created a petition later that year. This again, 2015, a Change.org petition that was asking for people to boycott if they did not stop their racism. And I created a whole petition. I wrote for The Advocate, an op-ed for The Advocate about racism in the LGBTQ community. Philadelphia Magazine at the time, this LGBTQ section called G Philly was profiling me. Sounds familiar. We're going to get there. They were profiling me a lot, interviewing me about these things I was doing. And there was lots of debate in the community and people were saying this stuff wasn't true. They were saying that this guy is dramatic, the community is great, everything's fine. And there was a town hall that happened in the fall of 2015. There was a woman named Nellie Fitzpatrick. Now, she's just, to me, a villain. And that's my opinion. She's a villain. But she was a woman who at the time was the Office of LGBT Affairs Director for the city of Philadelphia. And she was a white woman from Florida, lesbian. And she was, at the time, very... her whole energy around it was the worst. She did not have cultural competency skills to deal with racism. She was just really much being a white woman, white progressive, where she just didn't understand. She didn't understand. She didn't care to understand. She really didn't want to address racism. And then we will find out reasons why. But she just was she didn't take the situation seriously. That's how I read her. And she would later become antagonistic towards my efforts. So in 2016, January 2016, I got the job of, at that time, a Lifetime. I was hired as the LGBTQ editor for Philadelphia Magazine. And that's how I got my start at Philadelphia Magazine. I mean, I since went on to be writer at large, columnist, editor at large. Now I'm editor at large of Philadelphia Magazine, but I got my start as the LGBTQ editor. My predecessor had resigned and they had an opening. And there was a lot going on at Philadelphia Magazine, of course, as you know, a lot going on in the media industry. And my hire was a big deal at the time because I was black, because I was a black gay man. Where did he find this guy? I was young. I wasn't from Center City. It was just a big deal when I became the editor. But in that moment, the community was scared because they had already known my work around neighborhood racism and my work around neighborhood racism at Metro and some other places. So they had already gotten a whiff of me, and me going to Philly Mag sparked up some tension. So I remember Nelly had called my editor at the time in January when I first started this job and kind of did this thing around the lines of, the mayor or the office is not really pleased with this decision. Like kind of suggested to him in some type of veiled way that they were not happy that I was hired there. And they really did not understand why I was hired. And they just was not fans. And that was just like a moment where I knew coming into this fucking job, I had a target on my back. Before I even wrote an article, there was already sidebar complaints and shit from this woman and from the city. I was already public enemy number one. I was already an issue before I even, did anything. So, me at the time trying to be the problem solver, I reached out to her. Met her at La Cologne, won't ever forget that, and tried to explain to her. One, I was trying to get a feel for her. I was like, hey, you out here in the streets talking shit. What's good? I didn't come to her with that energy, but that was my mood. I was trying to be a more diplomatic person. She acted like everything was fine. She didn't know what was going on. She just act, how, that's how white people lie. They love to do the whole, well, oh, I didn't know. The play completely, absent-minded, right? But I made it very clear to her what these issues were in my own words and explained to her that this was an issue. And she, gave the performance of do-gooder white person. I'm going to be a progressive. We're going to get to the bottom of this. And at that time, this is now spring. There was some other issues going on. There was polices and pride polices and parades and all kind of drama. And I started to really cover these issues. I didn't cover these issues. And I covered journalism, LGBTQ journalism from an adversarial standpoint versus covering it from we're just going to talk about rainbows and press releases. I was someone who would call people, interview people. I covered the good stuff in the community, the bad stuff in the community. I covered everything. I covered the community like a community should be covered. That's how I viewed my reporting. I was not in this business of, I'm going to do image restore, right? Where I'm only going to tell you all of the good things that's happening, and I'm going to ignore the racism. I'm going to ignore the complaints. I'm going to ignore the discrimination that's happening. I just could not turn a blind eye to that because that was the experience I was having. I'm a black queer man in Philadelphia. I know the LGBTQI community is not, everything is not rainbows and line pops and sunshine. I was not going to fucking tell that lie. And as a journalist, it was not what I'm supposed to do. I was supposed to speak truth to power, and that's what I did. So I started covering some things. The big thing that happened was in spring of 2016. That was the beginning phase around May. Eye Candy, which no longer exists, they had a no Timberlands boots policy. They decided that they were telling people straight up that you cannot come into that bar if you had Timberland boots. No, it was no boots. It was Timberland boots, which to me, I read as being, clearly racist because it's obvious that they were trying to target a certain demographic. In Philadelphia, if you're talking about Timberland boots, who's wearing Timberland boots in the community, in our community, right? Timberland boots is a symbol of hip hop culture and fashion. Like, it's one thing if you said no boots, right? Because you want to scuff up the floor. But I could wear Doc Martens, I could wear Chelsea boots, I could wear everything else but Timberland boots. Interesting. So that was a denotion of slowly but surely trying to create policies that targeted black and brown people. Now, people get upset about the Steak 48 dress code. I want to say that, yes, all dress codes are subjective and there can be arguments made about how they can be racist. But I think the difference between the Steak 48 argument versus the eye candy one is that at a fucking nightclub that was allowing men to come up in there with high, gold spandex shorts and mesh and everything in between, how are you trying to keep a dress code and respectability where literally all of that's out the window in every other aspect? Steak 48 argument is we're a fine dining institution. We want people to look the part at our restaurant. And so there's a stronger case to be made for that kind of formal wear. But also to be clear, Steak 48 did not identify specific brands. So there's something, if they said no Timberland boots or no Adidas track pants, and they specifically said that, I would see the stronger case to really call out the racism upright, and that'd be a stronger argument. But that wasn't necessarily the case, which is why I think if people look at most restaurant dress codes and most formal restaurants, they all kind of have these type of dress codes. That wasn't the case. It didn't make any fucking sense at Eye Candy when you literally have, people, dancers and exotic dancers and people dancing on poles with barely no clothes on, that somehow Timberland boots was just for some reason something that triggered you. It didn't make any sense. It had to be racism. So there were people that was criticizing that, right? And I was one of the people that was critical. I was told at that time I was starting a race war. I was starting shit that I didn't know what I was talking about, that this Timberland policy was just a boot thing. And there was just a lot of gaslighting around it. And Daryl DiPiano, who was the owner of Eye Candy, was not a racist, and that there was a lot of that, and Ernest is just starting trouble, and he's trying to divide the community, and, we don't need this negative press in the community. It doesn't help people. Oh, I was called everything. I was called a black identity extremist. I was called a racist. I was called divisive. I was not popular, okay? Let's be very clear. This work was not. At the same time, there was an organization, there was a collective called the Black and Brown Workers Collective at the time. That's how they were named. It was co-founded by Shania Killa and Abdul Ali Muhammad. They used they, them pronouns, both of them. So they really was having their own movement work around issues in the LGBTQ healthcare systems. They were pushing against a lot of the racism too. And they were doing some direct actions that they had did in that February around Philadelphia Fight. But they were at the intersect of these issues. They were the active helm in the moving body outside of my words. So my words were my words. I wrote about the racism and things, but they were on the ground doing the mobilizing and work. And so I finally got to meet the co-founders in a more formal way during Pride Month, and there was some protest that was happening about Westboro Baptist Church. And in conversation with them, we were like, hey, there had been so much fuckery, right? There was disrespect around Post, which, as you know, this year marks the 5th anniversary of the Post shooting, nightclub shooting, which was a deadly gun violence incident that was terrible, that killed a lot of Latinx and some, black and brown LGBTQI people in Florida. That was terrible, y'all, right? This time we saw the community create events that erased a lot of Latinx presence in our community from those charity events around Post. It was a whitewashing. And at this point, there was just a lot of consistent errors and shines that they were not trying to acknowledge black and brown LGBTQ people in Philadelphia. So I got into conversation with the Black and Brown Workers Collective, the co-founders, at an event in that summer, 5 years ago today, and that around this time. That changed my life forever. Because in that conversation, it became clear that the demands that I was asking for in my writing, the demands that they were doing, that a lot of it was centered around the individual institutions. But in that conversation, it became clear to us that the city had an obligation. That the city of Philadelphia, that these issues around discrimination, these concerns, this was a city issue. The government had to step up, and that they were not. And why were we having this infighting in our own community without actually engaging the city? Why didn't we do that? Why weren't we thinking about that at that time? It was important. So there was a shift. And in that moment, my writing got more focused and sharper and asking questions to the Office of LGBT Affairs, right? This office had became permanent a year ago. At that time, the office became permanent. Nellie Fitzpatrick was full-time on salary, representing at that time Mayor Kinney's office in this regard. And I was like, what the fuck has the city got to say about this? We're asking the wrong people the wrong questions. We're asking these bar owners, like these bar owners gonna listen to us. They gave us their ass to kiss. We was asking nonprofits to talk and respond. They were giving us their ass to kiss. But we were at a point where it was like, what does the city have to say? And so my writing shifted. And I never forget a pivotal piece I wrote around August of 2016 where it was bold. And these are like moments I still remember. I remember the energy I felt, but the piece was saying that the city must address Gabriel racism. I shifted the conversation. The Black and Brown Workers Collective shifted their focus and their activism to be like the city must do something. And the city, and at that point, the protests started taking place at the city. And this is fall of 2016. Okay, notice that I haven't named a certain person yet because we're going to talk about that person in a minute. So stay tuned, enjoy, get your popcorn, sip your wine because the tea is fucking hot. August, September, protests, call-outs were directed at the city to respond to Gabriel racism. At this point, everyone was demanding statements from Nellie Fitzpatrick. People were asking for these people to say something, asking for Mayor Kinney to say something. And their responses were very passive. Everything became, go to the Philadelphia Commission on Human Relations. Go to PCHR. This is not in our purview. This is not a city issue. I mean, they was denying the city's obligation. Everything was, go file a complaint at PCHR, which people did, mind you. We did do that. But there was that shift. It was a lot of divorcing the accountability from the city. And it was a lot of that happening. September, because I'm keeping up with y'all. Early September, there was the first protests. Black and Brown Workers Collective went out. It was a small core. Wasn't that many people. I was there. Because that's when I started to play with Facebook Live and I started to cover things on Facebook Live. I have still some of that footage from those early protests and direct actions, okay? I was out there on the ground because what happened at this moment was that Woody's had implemented a dress code policy that said that people cannot wear Adidas track pants. They specified Adidas. They talked about certain fitted caps. And somebody in the community that was very known at the time got dejected and not allowed to enter. And it was a black man. And people were like, hold up, you can't even get into Woody's because they were having that dress code policy. So that furthered the movement where we realized it's not just eye candy, it's also Woody's too, right? So there was these conversations. And I also just want to add that during the summer, there was some issue because there was a bar called Boxers, which is no longer open, but they had an auction during that whole post event where they were auctioning black and brown men that were those exotic dancers up on the stand wearing tight underwear, and nasty old white men, okay, were bidding on them. And it felt like a slave auction. Just want to put that out there, that happened at that bar. Boxers no longer exist. They went from Boxers to Jocks. Now there's a new bar called Level Up that people think is trying to appeal to black LGBTQI people. I don't go to the neighborhood anymore, to be honest. I don't fuck with none of it. So I don't know what's popping over there. Personally, I don't see it. But moving forward, back to 2016, 5 years ago. So the Adidas thing happened, and that drove the first major direct action that the Black and Brown Workers Collective did. I was on the ground covering it. I brought my Facebook Live, and they went to eye candy and tied some Timberland boots on the door. Ciao. Iconic. I never forget that. They tied the Timberland boots on the door. Okay? Went through Woody's. They went through. It was a small core. It was not that many people out there, y'all. It was like about maybe 13 people that were together protesting this. It was not that much media attention. No one gave a fuck but myself. I was like the only journalist on the ground at that time, I believe, that was covering it. Maybe there was someone from Philadelphia Gay News. Sometimes they would come around, but I was the most on the ground, in-person, consistent person. The BBWC would call me. They would say that there's a direct action happening. Show up. I showed up. I got my ass, my boots, and got my Uber, took my SEPTA, and got my ass over there. Okay? And I was doing this, man, and it was hard. It would be hot outside. My feet would be tired. But we was out there because this issue was impacting us directly. This issue was impacting our lives. It was something that we just felt like the city had to say something. And I just want to say this because this is important before I forget, because there's some important tea that I'm saying for one night and one night only. But there was a lot of elected officials that knew this was going on and they turned a blind eye. There was a lot of black elected officials that to this day I'm still disappointed with because they didn't say anything. These people can get their mouths and say something about Stake 48 and the shit with Philly Weekly and all this drama, but they said nothing when we was going through the shit that we was going through. They did not say anything. Politically, no one stood up for us at that time. Nobody. Okay? Don't let Helen Gim and let them act like they were with it. I'm going to tell you when they came into the story. But these people were not with it. I would say that Donna Bullock, who was the state rep, was the only person that came out a little earlier before everybody else and got the Black Caucus to say something. But I will tell you when they said something and why they said something. But in the earlier phases, people turned a blind eye to us. Nobody wanted to say nothing because to say something would have defied Kenny, who did not want this to be an issue, and would have defied Nellie Fitzpatrick. But everybody just let this shit happen. They were reading these stories, sharing them, but nobody was critical. Nobody. That was 5 years ago, y'all. Understand why I tell you I don't trust white people, I don't trust the government, I don't trust people who lie, because this was what happened to us. That shit was terrible. It was a complete breach, but Philadelphia continues to fuck over people. I mean, the United Nations just declared that there was human rights violations here with those bombings, those tear gassings. Well, the bombing of Move was a human rights violation. Let's call it what it is. But there was also this tear gassing that happened, during the George Floyd protests last summer. Human rights people are saying that's human rights violations. This is coming from the United Nations. So this is a fucking embarrassment. And this is Philadelphia consistently trampling over people's rights of free speech, their human dignity, their rights, but it's all coddled in anti-blackness because this is stuff that happens to black people. When black and brown people go through shit in Philadelphia, the city is always fucking us over. Period. So at this point, we had those protests. Then at the end of September, I received, and this is important, this is the moment that changed a lot of things, which shouldn't have, because quite frankly, it was already facts. But there was a video that came into my comments on an article I wrote. Actually, that article I'm talking about, where I talked about these Woody's protests. Somebody gave me a YouTube link that they put in my comment section. They wanted me to read it. And it was a video of the owner, Daryl DiPiano from Eye Candy, saying niggers on camera. And was this as racist as he could fucking possibly be. And when we did that story, we broke that story of this man saying this N-word with the footage, because that footage still exists. All fucking hell broke loose. All of a sudden, everybody gave a fuck. Because somehow, no one believed us until the white man called us niggers. Nobody believed us until this white racist son of a bitch called us niggers. And it was until he said it, because that's what he said. He said, niggers, all on this video. That's how he felt about us. And he was referring to a black patron, a black man who used to work at that bar named Ricky Peterson. I still remember that young man who had left, but they were referring to him and also the patrons as that. Stereotypes galore. It was the most disgusting video I had seen at that time. It was a bombshell. It changed the course of my career. It changed the moment, the movement. It was a smoking gun that unfortunately white people would have never believed us had that video not happened. But it was the video that changed everything. And all of a sudden, Nellie fucking Fitzpatrick and the city decide they want to step up and they want to say something. Now they want to say something. Now they got something to fucking say. Now, all of a sudden, everybody wants to come out and do an investigation. So the Philadelphia Commission on Human Relations says there's going to be a hearing, that now neighborhood racism becomes this big thing. Because they didn't say anything prior. They didn't give a fuck. We were getting sold bar nickels, like bullshit on it. But that moment, everybody cared. It was a big deal. People put their energy into it. So the protests continued because there were protests. I will never forget the ICANN. That day, let me just say this. Let me back this up a little bit. The Black and Brown Workers Collective was some of those creative organizers and activists I know. What made some of the protests funny in the midst of the madness, right, was that they would create like artifacts and things to heighten the protest. So that day they created drink tickets that had Daryl T. Piano's racist words, and I think it was like a free drink ticket, racist drink ticket, and they were passing them out. I was like, who made this? Who created this? It was hilarious. And then I remember that one time when they protested against Nelly, because at this point, the conversation shifted where we started to demand that Nelly Fitzpatrick resign. We wanted her to resign. She needs to go at this point because her lack of leadership in addressing this issue and her continual blunders just made her not fit for the position. So calls for her resignation also started to mount up at that point. And I will never forget, there was one incident where one direct action where they disrupted her getting an award for something that she didn't deserve. And it was at Hard Rock Cafe that's out there on in Center City. And they went in there, and I remember it was like about 60 cops on bicycles outside of Hard Rock Cafe. And it was about maybe 10 protesters that came through. But they had all of these cops on bicycles trying to like guard her and guard. It was the most, I mean, when you talk about the anti-blackness of it all, the police, I mean, it was horrible. And they was able to find a way to sneak into the building, and they went to Hard Rock. And I still think I have that camera footage. And they protested her down. And she said one of the most disgusting things I have ever heard a city official say. In the moment where they were criticizing her and she was trying to act like she was listening, she said, when we talk about intersectionality, I want to know where you are when black trans people are getting killed. Mind you that about half of that damn protesting group were black people, and many of them were non-binary and trans people. So she literally tried to play the black on black crime card. She really tried to deflect the conversation, and we were sitting there looking like, are you fucking kidding? It was the most ridiculous thing. And everybody in the audience with like the protesters in the group was like, are you kidding? Like, it was just a lot of noise. It was wild. I couldn't believe she said that, but it got documented. And it was a moment, and she got served anti-black flowers, I believe they gave her. They gave her a bouquet of flowers for her award ceremony that were black. And I think they gave her anti-black flowers or something like that. I forget what they gave. They gave her flowers, and they gave her, like, asking her would she accept these flowers. It was hilarious, but also crazy. And then it was like more drama because in the midst of this, there was Jane Scholl from Philadelphia Fight, who was very problematic and still problematic to this day, that was trying to leave, and they were like asking Jane Scholl like questions about, you know, her role in her anti-blackness. Because let's be clear, at this time, the conversation and activism was focused on, the activism and everything was focused on the bars and nightclubs. But later on, as you all know, this conversation would then become about the healthcare systems like Mazzoni and Philadelphia Fight and those institutions as well, right? But the movement at this time was really focused on these bars and the neighborhood scene. I always tell people, like, if we was to ever do a documentary on this, which we should, there was part one and there was part two. Part one was the nightclub, and then part two was the healthcare systems and the nonprofit situation. So there was two things going on, but at that time, that hadn't fully got fleshed out until later. But it could be really a HBO like docu-series or like limited series. Like, who would play me? Anyway. I believe one day there might be. Who knows? There's gotta be. The story is crazy, y'all. Like, who would play these characters? Like, I don't know. But whatever it is, I want to be the executive producer, and I want the BBWC co-founders to be a part. We would have to just get this story right, because there's just so much erasure now. And that's why I'm telling this now, because this is archival. Because many podcasts, eons later, you all are going to listen to this episode and people are going to want to know what happened. And I want the record to show some of this. I mean, I've written articles about it. Please look them up. But I also feel like oral history is important too. So this is my oral interpretation of what happened. So that protest happened. There was many calls for resignations, many petitions that was created on change.org. And this happened for the rest of 2016. Okay. The hearing happened. Big moment. It was October 2016. The hearing happened. It was like hundreds of people. And I testified at the PCHR hearings. I testified on record and shared my experiences, shared how I was intimidated by the government, how People try to silence my voice, my observations, the work I did. PCHR continued to do their work. There was much more to come. January 2017, big moment, y'all. PCHR issued a report, and they confirmed that there was patterns of racial discrimination in the LGBTQ community in Philadelphia. They cited my work in 2015 as revitalizing what they know to be a decades-long issue. Like, there were previous reports in the late 80s when Wilson Goode was the mayor at the time. That was a commission on sexual minorities, what they called them, that addressed, there was some similar complaints of racial discrimination. And there was a report that was sent to Wilson Goode. And when he was mayor at the time, he didn't do anything about it. And I think that report came out in 1987. Then in many years after that, there was coalitions of people trying to create racial harmony in the neighborhood. And some of those efforts, it was like Black Gay Men Unite or something like that. That stuff never really evolved. It kind of died in the early 2000s. And then since then, there had been chatter about racial discrimination, but nothing ever moved. And in 2015, my piece in Metro, What He's Not Fetch Enough, that reawakened and reignited the movement. And then, of course, the Black and Brown Workers Collective was cited as being, the leading voices in really pushing and doing the activism to really take it to the next level. So we were a part of history. We are a part of history. I am Pride history. The Black and Brown Workers Collective is Pride history. Shania Kill, Dominique London, Nawazi, Christian Love Hall, Sharon Cooks, Louis Ortiz Fonseca, Naima Sanchez, part at work, Abdul Ali Muhammad, right? If I didn't say their name already. These were freedom fighters. These were the people that shaped history. It was the advocacy, the activism, the outspokenness, the archival work, labor. It was us. That was us. They could be mad, but that was us. That was us. And the report said that. And so, in February of 2017, the mayor fired Nellie Fitzpatrick. Yes, he did. He fired her. And he replaced her because the demands were from the community that they wanted a community voice. They wanted a Black person. They wanted a Black person. They wanted someone of color, right? They wanted a Black person for sure. I think everybody wanted a Black leader in that position. And he picked and hired and appointed Amber Hikes. Amber Hikes would have never gotten that job had it not been for the activism and the demands from myself and for the BBWC and the community activists. And let me be clear, because I want to set this up real quick before I get into the read. The issue is that what people have to understand is that when the Neighborhood Racism Report came out in 2017, a bunch of white people began to get quote unquote woke on this issue. A lot of them came out of the woodworks trying to front and act like they was at the town halls, that they was on the right side of history. They were not. And I want to also be clear that Amber Hikes was nowhere to be found in that situation. She was in California, living her best life in LA, I believe. She was doing some work with Upward Bound. She had lived in Philadelphia some years, left the community. She was doing these events called Stimulus and these lesbian parties that were really successful in the neighborhood. She was known to many people as somebody who was in the nonprofit scene, but she was a nightlife person, and that was her work. And she did some good parties and some good mixers, and that was her thing. She was a great event promoter and also community person. She did a lot of nonprofit work, and she was on the board of like Women Wasting and different groups. So she had a reputation. She was one of the few Black gay people, queer people in the community that was liked by the masses, aka white gay people. White gay people liked Amber. She was one of the few people that was able to integrate into those spaces. I always struggled in those spaces because I was in it based on proximity because of the fact that I was the editor of one of the leading LGBTQ publications in the city, right? There was PGN with Mark Siegel and there was Ernest at G Philly. Like, it was only us two. So I by default was in those spaces because of my journalism. Had I not been the editor of the LGBTQ section of Philly Mag, through like G Philly, basically, I would have never been in those spaces. I would have never been comped. I would have never been invited. I was never one of the girls, the popular girls. But Amber was. Amber was definitely highly popular. And so when she came back, there was a coronation for her because the white gays lived for her already, and there was already popularity around her. And for black people like myself who didn't really know too much about her, I was like, oh, a black queer woman, yes, you're gonna come in here and you're gonna be great. Woo, child. But let me just say this. It was good times in the beginning. When she got the position, I will never forget, we went to the Streeto. We had drinks. I laid the land for her. I told her, here's all the issues that's happening right now. Don't let these white people fool you. They were not friendly to us. Here's the fuckery. Here's the bullshit. Here's the stuff you need to consider. Make the Office of LGBT, Commission on LGBT, which they instilled a Commission on LGBT Affairs. Make the election process for the chair democratic, which is what I said. And I was just like, look, just be good. Listen to the activists. Listen to the black and brown people who've been leading this issue. As I'm always going to be a resource. Call me, text me. I was just like, I wanted to create an open transparency because I never had that with Nellie Fitzpatrick because she was god awful, problematic in so many ways. With Amber, I thought there was going to be a community and there was going to be a communication and things was going to be better. Whew. Someone I know got the chair. A black trans woman became the first commissioner of a citywide seat in the country. Became the chair of the LGBT commission. There was a lot of issues with that individual and that commission. And there's so much I can say about it, but I will say that person being ousted out of that commission, it was done in a way that was just disgusted people. And I wrote a whole long form piece about it. And Amber's role in it was just despicable. And there's nothing she can tell me to justify her behavior in being that involved in this person's ousting. We can disagree about people's personalities and their behavior, but to really coordinate this effort in that way against a black trans woman who identifies as a black trans woman at that time, to do that, I think was hella violent. And it really upsetted me. And she was upset that I wrote the story, but as a journalist, I gotta tell the truth. So our relationship got a little funny then. Moving along, before the summer, before Pride Month kicked off, this was 2017 now, she decided that she wanted to let me back this up. A company called Tyranny, which is like this LGBTQ, they're the agency, they're a design agency. They had a plan to design a flag. I don't know all the behind the scenes, but there was a campaign called More Colors, More Pride. Amber wanted to do something to make Pride a little bit more intersectional. They were the designers. I don't know if they designed the flag first or she told them to design a flag, but a flag got designed in this communication with them. She was working with Tyranny around this whole campaign. Tyranny had the campaign concept. They designed the flag, but she was the one I think that, got the city involved in the process. So there was a duality with them working together. The flag had black and brown stripes at the top of the flag. And this was, at the time, all about trying to bring the community together, trying to use it as a symbol to acknowledge and pay homage to the work that was done, the activism, the black and brown community members, to address the racial discrimination, to just be a symbol of inclusion and the progress that was happening at the time. It was inspired by what had happened those past fucking 2 years. The work and the things that she herself had not done because she was in LA doing her business, living her best life, as she should. But she was inspired by the work that we did, and that is why the flag happened. Let's be very clear, okay? At that time, there was other policies and things happening. The commission got formed because of the activism and work that I did and work that Abdul and Shani and BBWC did. The law that Derek Green put out and got unanimously passed by City Council was a bill to put tougher sanctions on commercial properties in the city of Philadelphia that racially discriminate.
which meant that Derek Green, council member Derek Green will tell you, at large, will tell you that he was inspired. You could Google this. Derek Green, non-discrimination bill, inspired gay racism. It will come up. He created this law that got passed that was inspired by the neighborhood racism, by my reporting, by the activism. That's what he did. Okay? And Derek Green, what I said was an exemption. He was the only person during the midst of a lot of that controversy that stepped up with legislative power. It was not Helen Gim. Helen Gim continues to center herself in a lot of this shit, but it was really Derek Green who stepped up and created this legislation and got it unanimously passed. I will always have respect for Derek Green because of that. I know he's a part of the Northwest Coalition. I know how people feel about the Northwest. I feel them things too. But Derek Green came through for the community. Derek Green was a straight black man that proved that he doesn't give a fuck about all of that other bullshit that he's going to do what needs to be done, because when you see an injustice done to one community, it's injustice to all. And let's be very clear. That bill he got passed has not only improved the experiences of just queer people. It is every community that is not practicing the Fair Practices Ordinance, which means that protects LGBTQ people, black and brown people, women, minority, everybody's protected under that. If it violates that, then they can get serious sanctions. Because let me be clear, when the report came out in 2017, right, that had said that they were found responsible and they found that there was racial discrimination, you know what the fuck these people got? They got a little fucking sensitivity trainings. They didn't get a fine. I don't even know if they got a fine. I don't think they got a fine. They just got basically sensitivity training. Like, all of them had to do mandatory racial sensitivity trainings. That was it. It was a slap on the wrist. But Derek Green's bill amplified that so that there could be other serious penalties they could face that wasn't a little slap on the wrist. To make sure that these bars do not think that all they could do is racially discriminate and all they're going to get is a little training or a little fine. Like, there could be some serious shit, like they could lose their commercial license. That was serious. That law was serious. And Derek Green is a real unspoken hero. And I will always sing his praises for doing that. Okay? So, back to this amber and this flag. The flag was a model from the Office of LGBT Affairs to have a response to all the legislative changes and community and social change that was happening. That was the cultural change. Those laws and those policies and those changes culturally, socially, and legislatively, that was other people's work. Amber didn't do those things. She didn't do those laws. She didn't do those laws, okay? She wasn't here to do them. But the flag was her contribution. But the flag would have never been had it not been for the work that she had not done prior. So, in making all this work, she begged for Abdul Ali Muhammad, the BBWC, and them to come out to that flag raising ceremony. She needed them to be there. I was invited. I showed the fuck up, right? And of course, she made me feel like, well, you know, I had to convince Mary Kinney to bring you, because Kinney was so mad at me because I did so much coverage. But I was like, man, if Mary Kinney is supposed to be anti-racist, which is not possible for him to do, but if Kinney was to be somebody who was supposed to be on the right side of history, why you got a grudge with me about something that you're supposed to have realized you fucked up on? Which is how I knew the shit was performative to begin with. But anywho, I was invited to that flag raising. I got a letter on a masthead from the city of Philadelphia. Gold, stamp, everything. Written directly to me, sent to me by the Office of LGBT Affairs. The mayor's signature, I believe, was on it. Where I was invited to that flag raising ceremony in June of 2017. Abdul got a letter. I got a letter. Shani got a letter. We all got letters. We got formal letters from the city inviting us to be a part of that historical moment. And we also was the first to receive that rainbow black and brown pride pin. I don't know if y'all seen it, but we were one of the first people to get the pin and the flag. It was a big fucking deal, y'all. This was like national news. And we did. We raised that flag. We was a part of that history. We're the reason why there are black and brown stripes on the Philadelphia Pride flag that has now been all across the world, from Australia to London and all of that. And I will give you something. Amber was an incredible hype man in pushing that flag across the globe. And she did experience some things, right? She claims and she says that she got death threats. And, you know, that was fucked up. as somebody who was doing this work for 2 years, death threats and all of that ain't nothing new to me. But I want to be very clear that what she experienced in that period of time does not compare to the suffering that we faced in the community for 2 years of being gaslit, discriminated, and pissed on. She got death threats and it was fucked up. But I think she has done too much censoring herself and what happened behind that fucking flag. She's done a lot of erasure. She's done a lot of revisionist history. And she doesn't tell the full story because now she does this thing where she's like, oh, I did it in acknowledgement of all the 30 years and decades of activists. Shut that shit up. You did it because you got in the office of LGBT affairs. You would have never gotten that flag done had you not been there. You would have never been there without the contemporary activists and the people like myself who stuck my foot out there when it was unpopular, when it was not cute, when there was no $90,000 annual salary for you to get. When she was in the office of LGBT affairs position, she got over $90,000 a year in that position. Now, some people might think that's low, some people may think that's high. But it's something to be said for a person who only had one staffer in their office and they wasn't running too much. She had a bunch of meetings, trainings. I mean, it was a good job, right? But let's be clear that she was a city official. You was protected by the state, okay? You didn't have a bounty or a dartboard on your back the same way that people like myself and other civilians had. And I think Amber really struggles with it because she so badly wants to be this woke activist, but you can't be nobody's woke activist while you working for the city, working for this crumb bum ass mayor and trying to flex like you out here with the people. Stop it. And she never wanted to hear people say that. Like, you are a government official. The way that you conduct things, the way you carry is very different. When people in city official jobs don't want activists, they want people that's going to push policy, push initiatives, and be that person. And I think she always felt uncomfortable with the fact that she wanted to be everything for everybody. And I told her several times when we had arguments, like, you are not like everyone else. You are a city official. You can't be acting like you can carry and flex the same way the rest of us do. You got health benefits and things that a lot of these other folks don't have. You're privileged in that position, and that's okay. But don't sit up here and take credit and censor yourself as being at the crux of the movement. She did good things, but she was not the crux of the movement. I'm sorry, you was not shooting with us in the gym. Amber Hikes wasn't shooting with us in the gym. I'm saying it for everybody else. Amber Hikes was not shooting with us in the gym. If you know the reference, you get the point. She was not. And there's no shade. No shade. It's just a fact. And so what's pissed us off, people like myself, people like Abdul and others, is that she is consistently taken this flag and has really acted like this is all her. A flag means nothing without the story behind it. A flag means nothing without the story fucking behind it. The flag represents the labor and the work, the tillage and the suffering and the pain and the struggle of Black and brown queer activists and storytellers and people like myself who stuck our necks out there. That Philadelphia Pride flag would have never happened without the work that we've done. It would have never happened. And if Amber was so woke on this, she could have been did the shit when she was a club promoter. You forgot you got your job because of what I fucking did. You're welcome. You got your job because of that. And let me tell you something. I will never take away her hustle. She has spent this shit around. The moment she got that job at the city, she got all types of press. I brought out the red carpet for her. She got on Best of Philly. She got all these awards. And she hadn't even been in a job for 6 months and was already on Best of Philly. Come on. But that's because everybody was trying to move forward. She was palpable for white gay people because they already liked her. She was able to really put a bunch of Band-Aids on some shit that low-key real rap was not fixable that fast. But everybody wanted to believe the lie, the big lie that Amber came in as a superhero in a cape and everything got peaceful and better. It didn't. There was some progress, right? But privately, there was still issues happening. And the second iteration of the gayhood racism movement focused on those healthcare systems and those nonprofits, and that's when the shit got really sticky. But she faded out in that position. It got too overwhelming for her. People started to be very critical of her. And the thing about Amber, from what I know of her, for knowing her for the years I've known her, she is somebody who is never going to ever want to be in a position of confrontation. She avoids it. She avoids any type of confrontation. She avoids being confronted on things. She is someone who's always going to be passive. She's passive aggressive as fuck. She will send a picture and act like she gives no fucks, but she gives all the fucks. Trust me, I know. She's the type of person that will take a selfie of herself and drink her martini or whatever and act like she gives no cares in the world what people gotta say. But privately behind closed doors, she's somewhere crying and yelling and mad as fuck and obsessing over it. She's a narcissist to the fullest degree. I've met bigger narcissists, but she's definitely in the top 10. I'm just keeping it 100. I've dealt with her on some high level shit. I ain't perfect, but goddamn it, I'm telling you right now, a lot of stuff that has happened was driven by ego with her. And she did something to me that I forgive her for, but I will be clear that I would be lying if I pretended that it was not fucked up. Okay? While we were having our beef or disagreements, there was a man, and some of y'all might know who this white man is. He's not in Philadelphia anymore, thank God. But I was being harassed cyberly and in many ways stalked by this white man, this old white man in the neighborhood. Well, he wasn't in the neighborhood. He's not in the anymore. I had to get my lawyer to send him a cease and desist letter. I had to block him on multiple social media things. He was creating fake social media accounts where he would then tag me, target me, send stuff. I had to report him to Twitter. He would call Philadelphia Magazine consistently, obsessively, send them emails. He was just somebody who was once a fan that then turned into a complete and utter nutcase. And it was scary. It was scary. It was so scary. This is the first time I have to encounter someone like that. I mean, I would later go on to deal with other people like this, but I got better at knowing how to deal with it. But at that time, it was just terrible. Like, this person would tag me and just, it was horrible. They was creating cyber accounts. Like, it was bad, y'all. Like, it was terrible. What I would find out is that Amber was in communications with this person, having private messages with this person in the DMs and posting these messages. And they were having private messages on social media. And this person, my harasser, put the screenshots of their direct messages of them going back and forth, having conversations about me. And basically Amber in that situation was feeding meat to the furnace, adding fire to the flame. And when it all came out, it was ugly. And I said to myself, why would a city official, why would this person who's all about, I'm a black person, black people need to get along, yada, yada, yada. Why would this person put this target on my back in this way? She did, though. She did. It was a lot. And it was betrayal. And I know that I had already had my feuds and drama with her, but I never would thought that somebody would actively feed the furnace of somebody who was cyberly harassing me and bullying me. So I was done with her. I was done. I was so done. And shortly after, through some time, the community just splintered. I think that at a certain point, there is still an LGBTQ community in Philadelphia. Like, I'm not saying there's not, but the hope, I gave up on the hope. I gave up on the idea that there would be this unity because there was so much betrayal. And she went on to work for the ACLU. She went on to, now she's at ACLU. Now she's this, I guess she's trying to frame herself as this go-to Black queer person on these issues. She's like leveraged and spun and ran that flag in the false big lie, given that she frames it like she came in and saved the day, that she invented this flag, that the flag and all these stuff is a byproduct of the work she did, and she erases us every single fucking day. And I even saw somebody posting, send me a screenshot on Instagram where someone said, I thought the Black and Brown Workers Collective created it. Let's be clear. I didn't invent the flag. I inspired the flag. The BBWC did not invent the flag. They inspired the flag. The inspiration behind the flag is what we're saying. We are an inspiration behind the flag. I mean, we are the reason why that flag happened. She could talk all day about how she laid out the design, but Tierney did that part. But she's always going to censor herself in this way. That's just unfair. And she likes to reside in identity politics. She's always doing the, as a Black queer woman, I blah, 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 blah. Let me tell you something. Lena Waithe is a Black queer woman, but Lena Waithe is problematic as fuck, and Lena Waithe has committed harm. Do not use your identity as a shield to divorce yourself from accountability from the shit that you did. You could be a Black queer woman. You could also be a person that did some fucked up things. Stop acting like your identity divorces you from acknowledging the harm that you've done. And so she has used that as a way to try to silence and intimidate people from calling her on her bullshit. I used to be one of those people where I was like, oh, am I being too hard? Am I whatever? No, I'm not. Amber is a Black queer woman that it matters. Her life matters. She deserves to live. She deserves to thrive. But at the same time, do all that without putting your foot on my neck. Do all that without putting your foot on the Black and Brown Workers Collective's neck. Do all that without erasing and being revisionist. Do all of that without being mean. Period. That's it. Like that's it. And I think that's the problem, is that the community, a lot of these white gays, they hate that we were right. They hate that we stayed the course and fought the fight and fought the battle and stuck it through. And that at the end of the day, I never forget that day when Amber Heights got hired. When Nellie Fitzpatrick had formally announced that she was leaving and she had got let go from the Office of LGBT Affairs, the first half of the day was, oh my gosh, oh, we miss Nellie. What we're going to do without Nellie? Nellie was the best thing ever. Those activists pushed her out. And then by afternoon, when I broke the news that that Amber Heights was going to be the replacement, then everyone was like, we love Amber, yeah! They were fake as fuck, y'all. They were fake as fuck. Like, they were so fake. And Amber really thought she was this Hollywood star because they all jumped on her, like white on rice. They were all crazy about her. And now she's gone. Now she's in a new city. Now she's got a new narrative that she's trying to put out there. Now she wants to reinvent herself again. And once again, here we are, back at it. So there's a lot of truth here. And that's what inspired a lot of the work. And this is the stuff that no one talks about. So I just want to put that out there. That's the story. We still here. We're still queer. We're still representing. Okay? And we will not be erased. We will not be erased. We will continue to fight on until victory is won. Period. Speaking of victory, because this episode is long, I've been giving y'all 2 long ass episodes. I was trying to be like, oh, maybe I should do less than 2 hours to test the waters. But from what I hear, you all love all of it. Y'all love the drama. Y'all love the smoke. Y'all love it. And this is one of those episodes where I was like, I need to say something. I need to step into this. I need to speak up about this. But I want to say that, wow. So I want to say some breaking news real quick. Donald Trump's suspension would last at least 2 years, the first timeline for the ban since the company cut him off in January. So he's basically suspended for 2 years. We ain't gonna see Donald Trump on Facebook. I'm sorry. Facebook, not Twitter, Facebook. We're not going to see Donald Trump on Facebook and Instagram until 2023. Possibly. But by then, I think he's going to be in jail by then, y'all. I really think he's about to get it in. Like I said, Letitia, do not mess with Attorney General Letitia James over there in New York, honey. She's going to fuck it up. I think he's going to be in jail by then. And I think Facebook is just trying to weigh it out. But he's going to be banned from Facebook and Instagram for 2 years. And his website, the desk of Donald J. Trump, has also been deactivated. Like, he's faltering, y'all. I don't know what's going on. But you know what? I don't listen. Keep an eye out for him. Even though I be acting like, it's like, keep an eye out for him. But I want to say this. Naomi Osaka, queen, tennis queen. Everybody's talking about her. I feel like, what can I say? I feel like when you have that much money and you have that much power and influence, like what she's doing is doing, she's breaking a cycle, okay? As a journalist, I believe people should go to press conferences and press things and whatnot. But sports is different. And this tennis star is saying, look, she has mental health issues. It makes her anxious. The media is mean to her. She doesn't necessarily feel like she needs to subject herself to that shit because some of this shit has become pointless. I was reading a good piece of work in the Atlantic by op-ed about this by Jamel Hill. And she makes this point about how the old days of tennis press conferences and sports press conferences, especially tennis, because, you know, they don't have year-round access. The press does not. Social media has changed the game where fans can engage with these athletes. They can tell their stories and the rest of us can follow them and listen. You know, even with myself, you know, I can set the record straight in various media platforms that are not the traditional media, right? I can post the post on my Facebook. I can do my podcast, right? And Naomi has found other ways to express herself and get her point across without having to fall in the trap of some of the nastiness of sports media. And a lot of it has been racist. There's not a lot of diversity. Over 80% of these reporters are white men, white straight men. Like, they're not diverse. And you look at the history of how Serena and Venus were talked to back in the day, how they were interviewed, how people challenged them even in their childhood. I understand why Naomi's like, nah, that's not going to be me. And why she wants to chill and take a breath. Because there's been a lot of anti-blackness in sports coverage. And even especially when it comes to black women. Like, why is it that Serena Williams, who is like one of the magnum opus of female tennis of our era, of our generation, is still treated like this outsider's pariah when she should be treated as like the expert? There should be an embrace to her that doesn't make her feel like an outsider. It's racist. And I think Naomi was always being pitted against, you know, Serena. And it was all of that. And, you know, I just feel like she's felt some level of depression, she said, around how that opening was. Well, it was supposed to be one of the happiest moments of her career. She was getting booed because she was not the favorable winner when she defeated Venus in that competition. Like, it's that stuff have a toll. And she's fairly young, beautiful, brilliant. Heads go off to her. She's like, I'm not playing your games. I'm not going to play your games. I'm not going to submit, because she's making an example. And the biggest shout out I would give is to that organization called Calm. Calm said that if anyone gets fined, any tennis player gets fined for mental health issues, they will pay the fine for them. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. I've heard people give other thoughts about Naomi. They try to do the whole, you know, ageism. Oh, young people don't know how to have conversations and shit. I mean, just all kind of dumb shit. It's not that. I think that what is interesting is that I think previous generations, and I'm talking about boomers, but Gen Xers, I feel like their whole resentment towards younger generations, like myself, who's a millennial, and the Gen Zers, like my younger brother, I feel like their whole resentment towards us because they're looking at us, say that the rules don't have to be this way, and they're not used to not following rules. Like, they're not used to this current trend of young people saying no and moving forward. Like, they don't know what that looks like because their whole life has been centered around this normalcy, right? You did have the countercultural movement, but then that faded back into Reagan politicalness where they wanted conservatism and normalcy again, right? And the whole idea around get a decent job, work a job for 20 years, yada, 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 get to go watch. they're still hell-bent on that. And they, as much as they want to defy it, they don't understand what we're doing. They don't understand that millennials and Gen Zers, we're coming in a different space where we're like, fuck all your traditional norms, because it's not working. The economy is killing those traditional jobs. The economy is not consistent. Everything is changing. Technology is speeding shit up. We can't do it like you all do it. Like, my career is very different from my parents, like my mom and other things. This is very different. So it's something to think about. Just putting that out there. Something to think about. So, shout out to Naomi. I stand with Naomi. Love her. Go girl. Okay, lighter subject matter. What the fuck with these bonnets? Okay, bonnets. I'm not even gonna go into what a bonnet is. People consider bonnets, and this is black conversation. First of all, bonnets have been worn by everybody, okay? Y'all know Mama Beresting from the Beresting Bears wore a bonnet and looked good in one, okay? She had the matching blue polka dot outfit, blouse, not even a blouse. It was the nice little, mama get up with the bonnet, and she looked fabulous in it, okay? Bonnets have always been a part of pop culture. For whatever reason, Monique and others like her have felt like bonnets, people wearing bonnets to airports is just such a bad look. It's going to make black people look bad, yada, yada, yada. Do you fucking understand that at the end of the day, the respectability politics around bonnets is that whether a black woman has her hair in cornrows, with a bonnet, with a Gucci, visor, they're going to still be disrespected by white people. If you're censoring the appearances of the discomfort of why do we do this, black people? Why do we always censor our entire value among the white gaze? Gaze as in G-A-Z-E. The white gaze of looking at people and viewing them through the perspective. Like, we are always thinking about what they think about us in italics. They as in white people. Why do we put that pressure on ourselves in that way? If you're going to a fucking airport, it's not about trying to be glamorous. Some people like to be glamorous at the airport. Do you? But like, I'm in Crocs, I'm in sweatpants, I'm chilling. People can wear what the fuck they want to wear. And quite frankly, it's not, if you think that our culture and our community and our image is going to die at the vine of a couple of black women wearing bonnets to airports, then that means you think very low of the density of our culture. It will never fall and rise on a fucking bonnet. And this narrative that we keep talking about black people looking like this and black people looking bad, what makes black people look bad is respectability politics. What makes black people look bad is us not having joy. What makes black people look bad is anti-blackness, colorism, okay, misogynoir. Those are the things that make black people look bad. Things that don't make people look bad are bonnets, do-rags, and everything under the sun. Gold chains and grills do not make black people look bad. Anti-blackness, colorism, classism, elitism, misogynoir, homophobia, that makes black people look bad. I rest my case. Moving along. Darius Cooks. So this man, I said on Twitter, first of all, the Kitchenista put a tweet and said that a certain blogger was the Sean King of cooking. I name names, which the Kitchenista is a black woman who's a great cook. When I read her tweet, I knew who she was talking about. And I like to be funny. I'm messy. Sometimes. I said, I'm going to name names. Darius Cooks is the Sean King of food blogging. Because he is. So if you don't know if you don't know who Darius Cooks is this black man who cannot cook. But he has made a name for himself on social media, making viral videos on TikTok and other forms of cooking. Somehow this man has decided he's a cook. I don't know who told him he was. This is the man who refers to salmon as salmon. He uses the L on salmon. He says salmon. He doesn't say salmon. He says salmon. So that should have been a red flag already. Okay? But he has some really weird habits and trends around cooking that is very questionable. But recently he got dragged on Twitter and on social media for this lasagna recipe he did that included some turkey, something I can't even, it did not look good. But he was making some lasagna that was some of the most god-awful lasagna I've ever seen. But he was getting dragged. He tries to trim it off and embrace it like it's something good. But the man's food is disgusting. And apparently he out here selling cookbooks without telling people what the ingredients are. He's made a whole hustle off of these bad recipes and trying to make himself to be this food expert and blogger. But he's not classically trained. He doesn't really seem to have any real formal understanding about the work, but he's then made himself a hustler in the field. Kind of like the way Sean King isn't an expert on none of the shit that he be talking about, but is trying to make himself a hustler in the field. Well, of course, the Sean Kingness of it all is that this man has gaslighted black women and disrespected black women in the food industry. People like the Kitchenista and other influencers in the space and women who've done the real work. He's just has become trash. I did not know all this about him, and neither did my friends, because we was hearing about him. It was like, wait a minute, this is that corny guy that everybody keeps hyping up, and this man's a problem. I heard about him, and I was like, not impressed. But there's just so much about him, and I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan about Darius Cooks. I don't think the food is that good. People have been talking. So some of the stuff that people said is like, they've teased him about some of his recipes. I mean, he just be making some of the most weirdest things. But people talk about how he's disrespectful to Kitchenista, who I follow on Instagram I like, but also this woman named Sunny Anderson. And he's always acting like people are hating on him, but the real tea is it's a mess. And so apparently he made some meal with heavy cream, herbs de Provence, sugar, blueberry wine, smoked turkey, jarred sauce, and unseasoned collard greens in a damn lasagna. It was disgusting. And he was treating it like it was Italian season when the name is French, but the most outrageous shit ever. And he thought they were similar, but they're very different. But he doesn't know clearly what he's doing. And it was just god awful. So I try to tell people that he's petty. He's disrespectful. He's out here. I heard people are trying to do private meals and things like that. He was making lemon pepper fried. Let me say it again. Lemon pepper fried salmon bites with homemade ranch. And he's based in Atlanta. And he put collard greens in lasagna, y'all. It's terrible. It's terrible. And he's been getting criticized for it. But I called him the Darius Cooks of I called Darius Cooks the Sean King of food blogging because he's got a lot of that stuff. He put Stella Rose apparently in his food. It's a lot. But I don't know if he's trying to be popular. But people are calling him a scammer apparently. Allegedly, they're calling him a scammer. There's a lot of problems here. So, yeah. Not a fan. Thought I should tell my followers, side eye. Side eye, okay? Major side eye. So, So, wrapping this up on something that's silly. I don't know how I want to frame this, but, you know, there's a lot here. I'll say this. Me and my friend had a really interesting conversation, Jamarcus, which I can't wait to spend the weekend. We're going to Philadelphia Distilling. He's my best man bonding with the groom. But anyway, we had this weird conversation, and I just thought I should just, share. So, we had a conversation about, sex, and it's Pride Month. And we were just talking about awkward sex experiences, not in our current lives, because my sex is not awkward now. Not my sex, but my part. It's good over here. But past experiences. And one of the trends we talked about was do people have sex with their socks on? I think they do. But we were talking about other weird things where people wear boxers. And one time I had experience where somebody they kept their pants on and their boxers and they pulled it out through the boxer hole. And I was like, yikes, what did I feel like? I felt cheap. But just talking about these experiences and realizing that there are people out here who really be, I don't know. I just thought it was weird. I don't know why. Well, I thought it was weird. I was like, I thought people who keep their socks on during sex, or their shoes or their pants on during sex, I thought that was weird. I don't know. I did. Maybe I don't know. Maybe the new generation is doing something new. But I was being told through my friend was like that this thing that people do are like, I guess, wearing boxers and sticking it through their boxer hole, but keeping their full boxers on. That is weird. But apparently there are people that are out here having sex doing that. I thought it was the weirdest thing ever. I was like, well, why do you feel the need to keep all your clothes on? Are you doing something you should be doing? Is it a situation where it's a quickie? Is it a mystery situation? I mean, I can understand the quickie situation, but what is going on? I was somebody that was very adamant on being a very traditional one. I was very like, look, you're not about to just fuck me somewhere in some random bathroom somewhere. Now, it's one thing to have, I guess, spontaneous, risky sex where you're doing it with someone you like, whatever, and that's interesting. But there are people out here. Am I saying I'm judging? Am I judging? I am judging. I just feel like there are people out here who they are very hell bent on having sex in places that are not comfortable. If you're dating someone who does not have a bed or does not want to have sex with you in a more intimate setting that is private, that is more gives opportunity for romance, you should dump that person. Having sex in the backseat of a car is only fun if that's a choice. But just situations where this person can't ever put you in a hotel or put you in a bed or put you somewhere where all their clothes can be off, I feel like that just should tell you what kind of situation you're in. Just saying. I was always someone who was like, you're not going to fuck me on some random couch. You're not going to just fuck me somewhere behind the bushes. What are we? 18, 17? What are we? 16? Like, what are we doing? Like, I just feel like I've heard some interesting stories with friends, and I just made me start thinking to myself, what the fuck? So, I would say all that to wrap up this episode to just say, have sex in the bed. Have sex in a house. Have sex in an intimate space. A place where you cannot have to wear your socks. Unless it's really cold. But you're in a house. Have some air conditioning. Have the heater on. Whatever. Just, I don't know. Just be smart. And that's everything. So, happy Pride. We'll see each other next week. Until then, be best. Ernestly Speaking is recorded in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and can be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud. To stay up to date with the latest on the show, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Mr. Ernest Owens. Use the hashtag Ernestly Speaking to tell me what you thought about this episode, and check out my website at ernestowens.com.